जय जय कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना भलाभा गिरिभरधारी। गोपी जना भलाभा गिरिभरधारी। यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रज जनरञ्जना। जमुना तीरा वनचारी। जमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। राम राम हरे हरे। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत Srimad His Divine Grace भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की ISKCON फाउंडर आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to Shishiguru and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 45 and 36, no? So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonum, Chapter 23. The Brahmana's wife blessed. Text number 45 and 46. I believe 46 is in the board, so I chant 45. Nanu swarta vimudhanam pramatanam grihe haya aho nasmarayam asa gopavakyai satam gati. Translation. Indeed, infatuated as we are with our household affairs, we have deviated completely from the real aim of our life. But now just see how the Lord, through the words of this simple cowherd voice, has reminded us the ultimate destination of all true transcendentalists. Text number 46. Anyata purna kamasya kaivalyadhyasisham pate ishata vyaiking asmabhir ishajai tadvidam banam. Anyata purna kamasya kaivalyadhyasisham pate ishata vyaiking asmabhir ishashyai tadvidam banam. Anyatha purna kamasya kaivalyadhyasisham pate ishata vyaiking asmabhir ishashyai tadvidam banam. Please, Jan. Anyata purna kamasya kaivalyadhyasisham pate ishita vyaiking asmabhir ishashyai tadvidam banam. Anyatha purna kamasya kaivalyadhyasisham pate ishita vyaiking asmabhir ishashyai tadvidam banam. Anyatha, otherwise, purna kamasya, of him whose every possible desire is fulfilled. Kaivalya, of liberation. Adi, and others. Asisam, benedictions. Patehe, the master. Ishitavyai, with those who are meant to be controlled. Kim, what? Asmabhihi, with us is Shasya of Him who is the absolute controller. Etat, this, Vidambanam, pretense. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Otherwise, why would the Supreme Controller, whose every desire is already fulfilled, and who is the Master of liberation and all other transcendental benedictions, enact this pretense with us, who are always to be controlled by Him? Purport. Although Lord Krishna is the absolute truth, He humbly sent his cowherd boyfriends to beg food from the Brahmanas. In so doing, He exposed the Brahmanas' foolish arrogance and established the glories of His own transcendental beauty by attracting their very wives to surrender at His lotus feet. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurube Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, in Krishna's discussion with Uddhava, in the 11th canto, Uddhava asked this very important question and this very important discussion that stems from several chapters, starting with chapter 14 of the Uddhava Gita, in which he asks, I read the question itself, because it's quite fantastic, that whole part. Because basically the point is he asks all these different paths for perfection, which one is supreme? Arjuna asks a similar question in chapter 12 to Krishna. Which one is the best, is supreme among these two paths of perfection, the impersonal or the personal, or the bhakti, basically this, the impersonal path or the path of loving devotion. And Uddhava asks a similar question, but Lord Krishna goes into great detail to explain the supremacy of bhakti. Let me go here. So in the beginning of this chapter, he asks, my dear Krishna, the learned sages who explain Vedic literatures recommended various processes for perfecting one's life. Considering these varieties of viewpoint, my Lord, please tell me whether all these processes are equally important or whether one of them is supreme. So, through this chapter, basically, Krishna established that all this, actually, later on in I think chapter 20, he says that he have given all this process. He have given the process of Gyan, yoga. He have given the process of yoga, of Ashtanga yoga. He have given the process of karma yoga. All these different processes that are bona fide process to actually achieve perfection. He have given this process because there is different levels of consciousness. And for different types of people, there's these particular different processes are fitted. They're actually appropriate for these people to make advancement in transcendental knowledge and purifying themselves. He actually specified, Krishna, that for what kind of people these different processes are fit. He says, this is in chapter 20. My dear Uddhava, because I desire that human beings may achieve perfection, I have presented three paths of advancement: the path of knowledge, the path of work, and the path of devotion. Besides these three, there is absolutely no other means of elevation. Among these three paths, Jnana Yoga, the path of philosophical speculations, is recommended for those who are disgusted with material life and are thus detached from ordinary fruitive activities. Those who are not disgusted with material life, having many desires yet to fulfill, should seek perfection through the path of karma yoga. If somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such persons, being neither disgusted with nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me. So, the implications that there is different types of levels of consciousness for those who actually look for transcendence. And according to that, there's a particular path. But when Uddhava explains, okay, so are they equally in importance? Are they equally? Would they achieve the same, if any of them is supreme, or they're all equal. It's all the same. You can actually do the particular path and achieve the same perfection. And Krishna goes to respond that actually no. The essence of the understanding is that without bhakti, none of these other processes will achieve full perfection. They actually come to a level of perfection, but it's not the ultimate perfection. Without bhakti, this process won't completely fulfill the perfection of life. So they all process that are depending on bhakti for achieving the whole perfection. The fact is that all this process basically lead towards bhakti. That is the idea. Krishna also explains that in the Bhagavad Gita. That the process of jnana, he says, is very difficult. It's very difficult. And it takes many lives. Bahunan jammana ante. Many thousands of lives of practicing this jnana yoga. And we achieve the highest perfection of this jnana yoga. What is it? Bahunan jamanade jnanavan. When you reach the end of all jnana, then what is the result? Vasudeva Sarvamiti. I surrender to Vasudeva. So the process of Gyan will lead you to the point of surrender to the Supreme Lord. And when you surrender to the Supreme Lord, naturally, when you understand Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that's what Krishna says in also in the Chaturshloki, the first verse of the Chaturshloki, Ham Sarvasya Prabhumatva Sarvam Pavartate Iti how do you go? Iti Matva Bhajante Mam. Naturally, one will give oneself to serving the Lord with love and devotion. What naturally happens when one understands Krishna's position, Vasudeva and Sarvamiti. And when it comes to the process of when reaching, also he explains that when one reaches this position of full realization of the impersonal, the Brahman realization, the impersonal aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This stage is called Brahma Bhuta. So when one reaches that Brahma Bhuta, Brahma Bhuta prasadanma nasochati na kanchati, one basically comes to the position of becoming free from the pangs of material existence and obtaining the happiness of the experience of liberation, of being free from that. The experience of eternity, of being an eternal supreme, an eternal spirit soul. And in that condition, then what happens? Then nasochati na kanchati, what is it? Brahma Bhuta Prasana Suchatina Kanchati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktin Lavate Para. That at that moment, the self-realized soul starts his devotional service. So all this path, that simply leads towards devotional service to the Lord. So devotional service is a supreme, the supreme path. Only through devotional service one can actually have access to experience our personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. Famous verse: Nasadhyati man yogo, nasankhyan dharma udava, naswadhyayas tapas tyago yatha bhaktir mamorjita. My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotional service rendered to me by my devotees bring me under their control. I cannot be thus controlled by those engaged in mystic yoga, Sankhya philosophy, pious works, Vedic studies, austerities of renunciation. So this particular understanding is what the Brahmanas are realizing now. They observing by Krishna's mercy, they able to observe and to understand the exalted position, the exalted symptoms that their wives actually being displaying. And it's very nice when you read this whole part of the Uddhava Gita. So I read it, and then it's more or less describe what the Brahmanas actually are realizing and observing what Krishna explains to Uddhava here. So again, so he say, only by practicing unalloyed devotional service with full faith in me can one obtain me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am naturally dear to my devotees, who take me as the only goal in their loving service. By engaging in such pure devotional service, even the dog eaters can purify themselves from the contamination of the low birth. And this next verse is very to the point of these brahmanas. Neither religious activities endowed with honesty and mercy, nor knowledge obtained with great penance can completely purify one consciousness if they are bereft of loving service to me. So all these processes are depending to have the proper result by bhakti. Without bhakti, then it's not going to do anything. It's not going to have the proper result. So, in other words, everything has to be under the umbrella of bhakti to be able to have the proper results. Neither religious activities endowed with honesty. So all these processes recommended in the Vedas for sacrifices and yagyas and different penances, all these things done with honesty and understandings and knowledge and following is not going to completely purify. It's not going to have the full purification. What happens with that? It is explained. Srila Rupa Goswami explains that in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that all these different prayaschitas, all these different process of purification, they do purify themselves, but they don't dissolve the root of the material propensity, of the sinful propensity. So the root remains there. The only way to burn the roots is through pure devotional service. So therefore, although they purify themselves, the practitioners, these followers of the Vedas, they purify themselves and elevate themselves. Those desires, when the seeds or the roots of the desire will fructify again, will again, come out at a certain point. Krishna continues, if one hairs do not stand on end, how can the heart melt? And if the heart does not melt, how can tears of love flow from the eyes? If one does not cry in spiritual happiness, how can we render loving service to the Lord? And without such service, how can the consciousness be purified? A devotee whose speech is sometimes choked up, whose heart melts, who cries continuously, and sometimes laughs, who feels ashamed and cries out loudly and then dances. A devotee thus fixed in loving service to me purifies the entire universe. Just as gold, when smelted in fire, give up its impurities and return to its pure, brilliant state, similarly, the spirit soul, absorbing the fire of bhakti yoga, is purified of all contamination caused by previous fruitive activities and return to its original position of serving me in the spiritual world. So the brahmanas are observing these symptoms of ecstasy on the wives, which is explained in previous verses. They were constantly, after returning They were constantly absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and experiencing all the symptoms of ecstasy. And the Brahmanas, by the mercy of their association and Krishna's mercy, then they were able to recognize and appreciate this. And thus, it is explained that they saw them as their spiritual masters. When a diseased eye is treated with medicinal ointment, it gradually recovers its power to see. Similarly, as a conscious living entity cleanses itself of material contamination by hearing and chanting the pious narration of my glories, it regains the ability to see me, the absolute truth, in my subtle spiritual form. The mind of one meditating upon the object of sense gratification is certainly entangled in such objects. But if one constantly remembers me, then the mind is absorbing me. So he continues like that. So, therefore, one should reject all material processes of elevation, which are like the mental creations of a dream, and should completely absorb one's mind in me. By constantly thinking of me, one becomes purified. So, without taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, without being under the shelter of pure devotional service, then even if one obtains liberation, one falls down from that position. If that shelter is not in place, if one neglects also famous prayers by Lord Brahma, Jenera Vindaksha Vimuda Madina, Jenera Vindaksha Vimuda Maninas Tvaji Ashta Baba Abhishuddha Bhudaya Aruhyo Krichena Padam Padam Tata Patanti Adho Nadrita Yushman Angrajaha. By neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord, even if one achieves the highest goal of whatever process that comes out of austerities, tapasyas, all these different processes, karma, anything, whatever so-called supreme destination that is concocted by impure intelligence, Abhishuddha Bhudaya, then soon one will fall down from that position of imaginary superiority or supreme position. We hear that even from the position of being merging into the Brahma Jyoti, then you can fall down. Because at one point there is a hankering for the element that is missing in that impersonal merging is Ananda. And without Ananda, there is no complete fulfillment or full experience of realization, self-realization. It's not complete. It's incomplete. So that incompleteness leads the hankering again for that Ananda. And then one falls down again. So, this is, by the mercy of Krishna, the association of the pure Yagyapatnis, the wives of the Brahmanas. Brahmanas are being able to appreciate and realize this, and they're lamenting, and they're also appreciating Krishna's position and the exalted positions of the wives. One important aspect is these are narrations that are being appreciated during the times of Krishna's pastimes in the previous age, in Dwapara Yuga. And so, if in Dwapara Yuga it is explained that the difficulties of achieving perfection to this different path, and the supremacy and the necessity of actually being under the shelter of the devotional process. What to speak of Kali Yuga? It was possible in previous ages, in the ages of Satya, of Tetra and Dwarapa, to elevate oneself through Vairagya and Vidya, through renunciation and to transcendental knowledge. It was possible. But in Kali Yuga, it is not possible. In Kali Yuga, the only process that is fit for everybody is bhakti. And that is explained, actually, in the Vedas. We have our Vaishnava Acharya, Srila Jiva Goswami, who always, in the Sandarbhas, he brings all these quotations from the different Vedic scriptures, from the different Puranas and Upanishads, in which it's all over. This is confirmed. It's there that. So I read some of them and then we conclude, that this understanding is there throughout all the Vedic scriptures. Padma Purana, Uttarakanda 194.5. Quote, in Satya, Tetra, and Dwapara Yuga, Jnana and Vairagya were the means to obtain mukti. But in Kali Yuga, attainment of Brahman is possible only by bhakti. And of course, we know the Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam kalo nastyeva gatir anyata. That in this age of Kali, the only means of deliverance is chanting of the holy names of the Lord Hari. There is no other way, no other way, no other way. He quotes from Mahabharata, Anushashana Parva 135.139. Quote, all the various types of yoga like Astanga Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, the various types of knowledge regarding Shilpa, Shastras, and of various activities, knowledge and science of Vedas and the Shastras, all originates from Lord Janardana. And then he says, he quotes this verse, he's going to make a point. He quotes this verse from Uddhava Gita. My dear Uddhava, I am the cause, the protector, and the lord of all mystic perfections of the yoga system, Astanga Yoga, of analytical knowledge, Sankhya Yoga, of the Dharma, and of the community of learned Vedic teachers. So, since Krishna is the ultimate shelter of all the paths of yoga, one by which Krishna is pleased most is considered as the best of all paths of yoga. All other paths of yoga are dependent on bhakti. Without devotion to Lord Krishna, all path becomes futile. Here's one from Vasudeva Mahatmya. This is from the Skanda Purana. Quote, followers of great vows, observers of great penance, profound Vedic scholars, knowers of Sankhya and Ashtanga Yoga, whoever one may be, without worshipping Lord Hari, one can never obtain perfection. He quotes from Narada Bhakti Sutra, text 25. Pure devotional service is far superior to karma, jnana, and Ashtanga Yoga. Padma Purana. This is so many nice quotations. Quote, one cannot achieve liberation by any other means, such as going to places of pilgrimage, performing yoga practice, sacrifice, cultivation of knowledge, and discussing Vedic literatures, except devotional service to achieve liberation. And so on, there's a whole bunch more. But the point is clear. And that's at the heart of this pastime, that the contrast of these brahmanas and this wife, the devotion, and the consciousness and the devotion and the perfection of their position, and how the brahmanas were exposed, their foolishness, as it says there, and then how they themselves are able to recognize that and being able to express remorse and appreciate Krishna's position and the position of the devotees. Stop here. Any comments or questions? Krishna Archana. Microphone is missing.
The Brahmanas identified their particular, you could say, process, since you've been putting an emphasis on different processes, as being the path of fruitive work. So they weren't even seeing themselves as being engaged in jnana, but seriously seeing themselves as just being engaged in karma. So the huge gap that's there between coming to a point of taking to devotional service and whichever other process is what you were identifying. And it seems that the process of coming to a point of feeling liberated, even that you were saying requires that step to be taken into devotional service. So for the brahmanas to have an immediate recognition of their particular position and understand that actually, like right away, that devotion to the Supreme Lord is the proper position means that they actually are further or kind of closer to that point of taking to devotional service than many persons engaged in these different processes who haven't even come to the point of recognizing that step that's to be taken in to transition to devotional service.
Yeah, they actually were performing karma yoga. So it's not just karmis, but they were yogis. They just as described in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, their offerings were for the pleasure of Vishnu, and they're following all the different principles. However, it was the element of bhakti was not highly developed, and that's what got exposed. So, and that's the point that is made here, that that without that shelter, that umbrella, that element, then all these different processes are really don't going to eliminate, and they're going to fully purify oneself. So, and the important element that was brought in the class yesterday, Ujjwala Prabhu, he explains that very nicely in terms of the association. With the association of the wives, devotees, then they were able to see this and understand, because they're transcendentalists, and in one sense one can see they were honest, but they were still covered by their they were not fully purified. But by that association, they were able to understand. They received that mercy. So, yeah, it's an important aspect. The aspect that it will be created. This mercy, it comes through the association of devotees. Otherwise, then they won't be able to recognize that. So when that association comes, then the element, the capacity of being able to recognize these things for persons who are pious, sukritinas, then a natural, all these things start to happen. The attraction, the seed, the devotional seed, that bhakti seed, the bhakti lata beach gets implanted by the mercy of the devotees. You want to add something? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. You were mentioning that whatever verses you were quoting, that all other processes without bhakti are kind of fruitless. And we also see that we may be engaged in devotional service, the process of bhakti, but everyone's motivation is different. And we see if we have the proper motivation, then our Krishna consciousness will survive. If we have the improper motivation, it won't survive. And so one thing that Ujjvala was mentioning is yesterday, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and he says one very profound analogy, and this analogy is actually, he mentions this analogy in his book, Trinada Pisuni Chena, Lord in a Straw in the Street, and this is like the theme of his book, because his disciples composed his book of his lectures, and they use this analogy on the back of his book, and this analogy is mentioned several places throughout the book. And the analogy is described actually in the Bhagavatam 11th canto, chapter 16, verse 43. It says, Yovaiva manasi samya asamya shandiya yatihi tasya bratam tapodanam shravati amagatam bhuvat. It says a transcendentalist who does not control, one part of bhakti is controlling your speech, Rupa Goswami says. So this verse says, a transcendentalist who does not fully control his speech, van, and mind, manasi, he'll soon find that his bratsa, vows, tapa, austerities, and dhanam, charity flow away, just as water flows out of an unbaked pot. And we see that if we don't like somebody, our happiness flows away. If we fault find, it's very simple. So Krishna may not punish us, but we're actually a punishment to ourselves. And so the lesson I got from this analogy is that one thing I share with others to make it in layman's terms, that we see a clay pot is either whole or a clay pot is full of holes. A clay pot that's whole can hold water. A clay pot that's full of holes cannot hold water. So Gaur Govinda Maharaj mentioned in his book, Lord Chaitanya is giving Krishna prema to everyone. But why isn't everyone receiving it? He gives this analogy. If our character is full of holes, fault-finding, criticizing, or instructing somebody who hasn't accepted us as their instructor, then all our happiness flows away. And this is just a last appreciation. The wives of the Brahmana, they engaged in the process of bhakti, and one aspect of their bhakti is that they didn't go up to their husbands and say, my dear husbands, you're fallen, you're stupid, we're enlightened. And generally speaking, we see if that's what we do, our happiness just flows away. So if I had to ask a question, maybe you could expand on it. What are some steps we could take to realize that even if Krishna doesn't punish us, we're actually very miserable fault-finding. We see when people fault-find, their happiness flows away. Somehow or other, we're able to stay in Krishna consciousness, but if our offenses increase, like Shishupal, then Krishna's like, okay, you won't learn, from me giving you so many chances, let me embarrass you. So what are some steps we could take to give up this fault-finding tendency, this hole in our character? Before, Krishna, we see, he humbles everyone, and it's for our benefit. So what are some steps we could take, before this happens? And realize that we're actually a punishment to ourselves.
I think I think we discussed that before, because it's a recurring question in terms of fault finding and how to, avoid this propensity. You asked that many times, and it always comes to this, answer is one have to one of the principal aspects of our practice of sadhana is to be introspective. So the brahmanas are being introspective right now. So we naturally will commit mistakes. That's there. As long as we have we're afflicted by material condition, then we're going to go to some tribulation. There's some purification that is required. So it's expected. It's expected that we will make mistakes. It's expected that you go into some downs and ups like that. But the part that is also expected from us, if we are honestly on the path of purification, is to be introspective. If to be able to, when that moment becomes clear, that I realize I'm suffering, when that moment of if one trains oneself to be introspective, when we see, oh, I'm having this negative emotion, I'm going through this negative space, and it's not fun, then I start to look inside. It's an automatic. It's a process that one automatically falls down. You train yourself like that. And that's part of our sadhana. We have to be introspective to be able to understand Krishna's lessons as we go on in our path of devotional service. So it's the same principle that rules, our japa. When we find that the mind drifts into something else and becomes distracted from the chanting, then you bring it back. So similarly, if we see that our consciousness goes, into some materialistic views of things, then if you're introspective, then you realize, oh, okay, this has happened. You bring him back to, sort of reconnect again with your reality. Reality, if I'm a devotee, I'm a practitioner, I'm a sadhaka, I'm a servant, I must cultivate this, you go back to introspection. So that's a principle. And with that, then all these different faults that are there and weakness that we have, unwanted things, they become purified. So we have to apply ourselves. For some of us, it may take, whatever time it may take, but we have to honestly endeavor into this process of purification. We have to get rid of these anarthas, and we have to be introspective for that. Okay? Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki.